Breaking news. Breaking news, everybody. Kadarius Toney traded to the Chiefs. 3rd round pick, 6th round pick. And what you may not have heard is our beloved host, John Warner, also involved in that trade. He's heading to New York. You're left with me. What do we do with this? Last week, we saw Mecole Hardman go off for 3 touchdowns. That's the prototype. That's just a snippet of what we're getting with Kadarius Toney in the Kansas City Chiefs offense. On top of that, we've got a vacated Tyreek Hill role that has yet to be filled. Thought it was going to be MVS. Ergo, entered Kadarius Toney. Sky's the limit. Everybody's victory lapping. Everybody's pumped. Thankfully, we still were able to retain the rights to John. So let's bring him in, introduce our awesome guest today. It's going to be fun. Go ahead, John.
Dude, you said sky's the limit, and I was like, yo, man, sky's not the limit anymore, man. R.I.P. Sky. R.I.P. Sky. We've been teasing this one for a minute here. We got the man who has an absolute monopoly on theft. He steals the signals. He steals the bananas. He steals the lines. And he's too humble to plug any of it, so I'll do it for him. Go hit that Ben Gretch Substack in the bio there. You should already be subbed, but if not, we reference it all the time on this show. It's part of our mandatory reads section, all the hype. Let's just bring him in here. Let's talk a little ball, and let's put some facts and reason to our hot takes, huh? Gretch, what's going on, man?
Not much. That was you rolled out the red carpet a little bit for me. I don't know that is as deserved as you're making it sound, but glad to be here, guys.
See what I tell you, humble as shit, eh? Every time, just so humble. It's like he writes the best article in the biz every week, and then he still doesn't own it, you know?
That stealing signal, I've been trying to put like everybody I can on the stealing signals. I promise we'll stop just like buttering you up here in a second, Gretch. But
it makes me super uncomfortable.
I know.
I'm going to have to go talk to my wife after this so I can get told her.
But like
back in your place.
But just like a great wrap up about just like the games that have happened and just like really cool discourse just on like football in general. So if you haven't, definitely check it out. It's very clutch. It's very clutch.
Mm-hmm. And like it's so informative, but it has such a nice conversational flow to it. Like it just seems like you're talking to us. So I always look forward to it. Anyways, that's enough butter in your bread. Let's talk. Actually, I want to hit non-football related just for 1 second. Gretch, I know it's a sore spot for both of us to bring up the Mariners right now, but I just want to know what the vibe was, because I flirted heavily with coming down for that game there, and the prices were just astronomical. But like, how was the vibe in the building, energy in the building, comparative to like any other sporting event you've been at?
That was crazy. That you're talking about the first playoff game, baseball game in Seattle in 21 years. It was the game 3 of the Astros series, went 18 innings. I mean, we were standing most of those 18 innings. The energy never wavered through 18. I mean, obviously, it's a playoff game, 0-0 the whole game. We were in the stadium for – the game lasted more than 6 hours. We got there like an hour early. So we were in the stadium for more than 7 hours. And we had some like air quality stuff up here, like where we knew that we were going to this game, and it was a really bad air quality day. There had been some wildfires. Like, I'm probably not great for my long-term health to be outside for 7 hours just chilling and breathing all that stuff. But it was an incredible atmosphere. I mean, I've been to a lot of cool sporting events, been lucky enough to go to playoff games in basically every major sport, been to a lot of games in a lot of different cities and different places, traveled to a Rose Bowl. It was probably the best atmosphere that I've ever been in that I can remember. It was crazy and bummer that they lost, but it was super fun. It was super fun.
I mean, in terms of just like my perspective, obviously watching on TV, being so dialed and stuff, like you could obviously see the haze like on the broadcast and whatnot. So you knew it wasn't as beautiful as it could have been, but like just that energy to sustain and be that loud for a 0-0 baseball game for 18 straight innings. I was like, man, it just speaks volumes to like, I don't think people renown Seattle for like the sports town that it should be, because between like how loud the Dog Stadium is, how loud CenturyLink, or formerly CenturyLink, and then how loud that is there, like for that game, I was like, man, that's a sports town, right?
Well, and when the Sonics left, and that's part of the reason they get that reputation, everyone goes back to, or everyone did at that time, go back to the 96 finals, and people were saying that the first games in Seattle, I mean, I wasn't there for that, but when I was like 9 years old or something, but the atmosphere for that was unlike any for an NBA finals game, and how crazy it was. And like, you just saw a lot of like long time NBA writers. And that was just something that I always remember when they left, that like people acted like Seattle didn't embrace an NBA team. And there was a lot of people that were like, this isn't true. Like, I was there for these NBA finals games. It was crazy in the 90s. And I mean, I did actually go to one of the playoff games in 95, the first year that the Mariners ever made the playoffs. And when I was like 8, and I still have like memory clips of it. That was a crazy atmosphere. I remember it was actually the one game play-in to get in. They tied and a one game play. And people rushed the field, and I remember like seeing a guy get arrested.
Oh, that was back whenever people were still doing that.
It was 1995. There's a dude in jean shorts getting arrested at the warning track, like. And I remember asking my mom if I could go out there, and she's like, "No." I'm like, "But look, everybody's out there." And she pointed out that this guy got arrested, and I was like, "Yeah, but look at all the other people that aren't getting arrested." Like, I thought I should be able to go right out on the field.
Yeah, man. Playoff baseball is such a one of a kind atmosphere. Hard to beat, truly. Yeah,
it's a good sports town. I mean, there's a lot going on up here. It's maybe a little bit fair weathery more than for my liking, but when we have good teams and we have teams that commit to winning, like Seattle goes crazy.
Yeah, two-way street. You got to earn some fandom from a franchise standpoint.
Yeah, it's true. Okay,
the Sounders.
Yeah,
like
Sounders,
the biggest soccer team for fan support. I don't really watch soccer, but as soon as they started a soccer team up here, I mean they led in attendance for like not just their first years, but like 5 or 6 years or something. The Kraken just started up here, and they draw huge crowds, and tons of people are stoked about that. Even when the XFL started, everyone was talking about the Seattle Dragons. I was like, all right, like I got like my father-in-law asking me about the Seattle Dragons. They're all pumped about it. And it's like, I don't think there's any other city embracing their XFL team right now.
Oh, I love that. Oh man, let's talk a little ball here. I want to harp on one thing that you started stealing signals with today, and then kind of apply it to like what I want to do is you talk so much football, and everyone can read your stuff. I want to apply all that stuff to what we've been doing with the Underdog to make it applicable. And like one thing you really pointed out in the beginning of Stealing Signals this week is how like kind of average scoring is pulled down, and we've seen such outliers at the top ends of positions. We've seen outliers at quarterback, we've seen outliers at tight end, and then we've kind of seen this like middling ground of running backs that wouldn't have been outliers in years past, but their volume floors are making them outliers. Is that like a fair, safe summary? Okay, yeah.
It's a really fair like top line explanation as far as how I'm seeing it. I was joking last time on ship chasing, like how do we even do our job? I mean, obviously I was kidding, but it really is that outside of some of those early round picks that are hitting, when I get asked about trades and all these things, like the way that I analyze things, there are a lot more players that feel like holds right now, right? Like there's not a lot of clear buy. Like you can always buy into ambiguity, but there's not a lot of clear buys. There's not a lot of clear sells. Even some of the players who we expected big things for that aren't really performing, there are legitimate concerns about, right? And like, I don't know that they're like easy buys. Like we have to see some things positive happen. Like the immediate guy that comes to mind that we talked about last night that was available in some of these FFPC main events is Elijah Moore. Like traditionally a pretty easy buy, but you talk about that offense as well, how little they're throwing, and the fact that Garrett Wilson, if one of them is going to hit, has been earning targets on a per route basis at such a higher rate that I would be a lot more comfortable putting my chips on Garrett Wilson being the guy that hits, and then Corey Davis still has a role. They've been throwing to the tight ends a lot. I mean, I do think there's going to be some pass volume, and that's going to shift for the Jets, and they're going to have some games that are exciting. And I do think Elijah Moore probably in the short term gets fed some targets now that he kind of
the old squeaky wheel.
Squeaky wheel. But as far as long term, like how does that actually settle in? Like he hasn't been earning targets particularly well so far this year. The team is going to have some low volume games. And so it's like, I don't know what is Elijah Moore buy? I don't know that I want to. I mean, there's a lot of players that feel like holds right now. And the biggest reason I think, and you alluded to it, that I wrote about this week, is that it is about the way that football is being played in 22. It is about the ways that defenses are approaching offenses, which kind of shifted mid-season. Last year, I think really the Chiefs were the first team that teams were like, we're going to take away the deep passing. I mean, 2 years ago, it used to be Tyreek Hill going deep, and that was Tyreek Hill's role. Basically, from the middle of last year through the end of the year, Tyreek Hill became more of an underneath receiver, and a lot of what we've seen him do in Miami as well. He's been completely different. He's been very good in that role, and that's been somewhat surprising because it wasn't like his whole role prior to that. Like his big value was these 75-yard touchdowns and things that we're just not seeing around the NFL. That happens midseason last year. It carries throughout most of the year. It's been a huge part of this year. The ADOTs are down, passing ADOTs are down, passing efficiency is down. It's one of the lowest like per attempt passing efficiency league-wide seasons since like pre-2010. Like, and we're talking 2014 was a huge shift in the NFL when they started it wasn't, the advent of illegal contact and defensive holding, but they had that offseason sort of a mandate that they were going to police those fouls more tightly or
diligently.
Yeah. Call more defensive holding, call more illegal contact. It was largely in response to the Legion of Boom and all the talk in 2013 how they would commit so many fouls and force teams they led the league in secondary penalties, but they also had this incredibly good secondary that kind of forced officials to call penalties. Yeah. And that was, sort of pissing off the league or what have you. Anyway, there was this response. And since then, passing skyrocketed in 2015, 2016, 2017. We're now back to, levels of pass efficiency that is pre that when defenders were able to put, their hands on receivers a lot more and do a lot of different things. Haven't really seen this bad of passing in an NFL where they actually do call those penalties, right? I mean, it's the way that the defenses are approaching things. And so what we've had is a lot of these pocket passers. I wrote a lot about QB mobility this week because we have a lot of the pocket passers, the Tom Brady's, Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert's one that I brought up because he had a couple games recently where his ADOT's way down. He's taking a lot of checkdowns. They're not able to get the ball downfield, and they have to move. I mean, all defenses are being described as bend but don't break right now. But when you have to move it through the air and you're more of a passing team, you have to complete a lot of consistent passes to move the ball down the field. And as soon as you hit a couple incompletions, now you're probably looking at a punt situation as opposed to these offenses that are able to run effectively, consistently effectively. Like, I mean, Atlanta has been a surprising team that it pisses me off how much they run. At the same time, they're running effectively. They've had some scoring drives, but those offenses are weaponizing their QBs that are mobile. Marcus Mariota, design QB runs, and also scrambling and changing the ways the defenses can sit back. It was so funny in that Bengals game. They throw 13 passes, but then the second they need to throw, they're able to get over the top. They're one of the defenses that can hit for a 75-yard TD because teams have to commit, a spy into the box. They can't have as many guys sitting back. It changes the way the defense can play. So you have the traditional pocket passers that tend to have all of these pass attempts and all of these targets available for all the skill guys aren't particularly successful. So those aren't really fun fantasy teams. And then the ones that are actually surprising, the Falcons, the Giants, the Bears, are weaponizing their QB mobility. It's taking plays away from the skill players because the ball never leaves the quarterback's hand. There's no handoff. There's no pass attempt. And so those offenses, while surprising, are also not generating a ton of skill position points. And across the NFL, because of the way defenses are playing, you wind up with a shitload of players that are not that exciting, right?
That's okay. There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to dive into, but kind of where I was trying to, meander this towards was we've seen in our contests, the elite tight ends and the elite quarterbacks dominate ADP this year. They have been week over week, that elite threshold has been, what do you guys say? 4 of the top 7 picks on a weekly basis, something like that.
Not including this week, like the last 3
Yeah,
weeks
this
have
is an
been
outlier.
just like, because we don't have any like true elite QBs and tight ends this week, but the past few weeks it's been locked in on those elite guys.
Yeah. So kind of where I was thinking with this is, if we know this and we know that this is, maybe it's a big enough trend that skill position and scoring is quote unquote flatter so far right now. Is this something we can then lean into? Like, should we be targeting these elite outliers at the tight end and quarterback position? Like, has the market adjusted efficiently, or is that a flawed mentality and we should still be chasing the ceiling of these guys that we know the potential's there for the AJ Brown 150-2 scores game? Should we still be chasing that in the first round instead of Mark Andrews?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that I'm trying to think about with this landscape is, and we do this too much, I think, as a fantasy industry, is applying all of the recent trends as if they are the whole picture, right? All of this matters, but we have to analyze this in the context of all of the things we know about fantasy football over multiple years, over longer stretches. QB in particular, to me, that has felt like, I mean, I live in a state, unfortunately, where I don't get to use Underdog. So I haven't played a ton of these. You guys will have to correct me if I'm wrong, but that, I don't know if those are hitting a ton, but that has felt like a poor decision to be taking quarterbacks in the first round, because what we know about quarterbacks is any quarterback in a given week can have something of a ceiling. Like this was not probably on the slate last week, but you had Andy Dalton on Thursday Night Football throw 2 pick sixes, force himself into a negative pass script, but then end up throwing 4 touchdowns and having a huge fantasy score. If Andy Dalton can do that, you're talking about the replaceability of the position when you're talking about large contests. I think it's a high floor, low ceiling strategy to be targeting safe quarterbacks because nothing else feels safe, right? As opposed to targeting positions where, I mean, everything is down. And if you string together the wide receiver ceilings, the running back ceilings, the tight end ceilings, the difference making potential at those positions in that given week just dramatically increases the overall ceiling of your whole team. It's the same kind of concept as, why do we not draft quarterbacks in the first round and season long for so many years? Because quarterback is more replaceable. And I think even more so on a weekly level than a season long level, right? Like, it's kind of the idea around streaming quarterbacks, that you can find every week a different quarterback to stream. But in terms of a one week landscape, to me, that early quarterback thing has probably been an inefficiency. Maybe it hasn't hit a ton, and maybe it remains as an inefficiency, but in part because of stuff like Andy Dalton being one of the guys who did hit, not being probably on the main slate last week. But if he was there, I mean, I imagine the Andy Dalton teams would have been the winning teams, because they're also stacking together. I mean, I would want to be targeting the elite running backs, receivers, tight ends, because there's also gaps there. And getting Mark Andrews on my roster, getting Tyreek Hill or whoever on my roster that I know is going to have ceiling, and then backfilling the position that's more replaceable.
Yeah. It's a really good one that you brought up, Andy Dalton, because Andy Dalton was part of, basically they've been running 2-game contests for the Island games, and they'll pair a Thursday and a Monday. They'll pair a Thursday and a Sunday. A London game and a Thursday night game is what we have tonight, kind of thing. And last week's slate with this what was it, Arizona game, Dalton ended up being the optimal captain. But when the drafts for these were taking place, he was the 6th round pick, right? Because everybody was thrusting up the ADP of Tua and Kyler. And then those would be first round / second round picks. And then what you needed was Dalton in the last. And Dalton was actually, I think he was the 4th quarterback off the board in these contests, right?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. And then there was also that added kind of like haze that potentially Jameis might have played as well. So for you to land on Dalton, and then Dalton has the ceiling game as well, it was both unique, and it was playing right into what you're saying with the variance at the quarterback position.
But even just not focusing too much on the expectations for Dalton, I think Dalton's just a good example of where quarterback ceiling can come from anywhere, right? Like, not focusing too much on that specific outcome and how it played out in these drafts. it can obviously come from the elite guys too. But again, this goes back to why in traditional DFS, we sometimes salary save a quarterback, right? Like we all know Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, these guys have the highest ceilings, but you might build the best roster by paying up at the other positions where those ceilings can be more of a differentiator and hitting on like a 5K quarterback, right? Or I mean, Sam Ehlinger is going to be this fun 4K option this week, and he might have some ceiling. If he, I mean, he's just a mystery box. We don't know what the hell we're going to get, but we know he's mobile. I mean, that's the one thing that we can chalk up.
The interesting thing about that contest too was there was only 3 draft like size, so you didn't even need to draft Dalton. Like people were going out of their way to draft Andy Dalton at the end. So that was just an interesting thing.
Similar situation for this week's double game slate. It's 3 people in one contest as well, so you have the ability to actually like make a decision for the QBs there if you want to for your last QB.
With Russ's health not being known, that the Broncos are the example of that team, right? Like,
yeah, he's going overlooked a lot. It's Trevor, it's those two, and then
it's
the last guy gets stuck with Lawrence and Wilson, and then I've been going Lawrence most of the time, and then I've gone Wilson once in mine. So
yeah,
I'm assuming that's what's going along with the market. So
and then if Wilson doesn't play, there's going to be like 5 people that drafted Brett Rippon, right?
Well, then they will swap. So
I guess then they'll swap. They can either swap to Lawrence or Rippon, but chances are they'll swap. Like 90% of people, if that does happen, will end up with Trevor Lawrence because most people won't be up in time to because you have to set custom ranks in order to get that out player swapped. So chances are you would be very unique with Rippon. Yeah. For whatever it's worth, there's some Rippon leverage. But not encouraged.
I'm not sure that he's going to be the Andy Dalton this week, but
Ben declares Rippon 30-point week.
Yeah, I heard it here first. You brought up Sam Ehlinger. I hit on a couple names that I just wanted to touch on that you were talking through signal versus noise and this sort of thing, and then apply it to our player pool. One of them that you just brought up was Ehlinger. Ehlinger is going largely undrafted. He has a 35.9 ADP, which means he has been drafted at some frequency. Granted, it's very low, and he's quite a far ways down our board. What do we think there? We brought up the rushing floor. Is there any contest winning ceiling with Ehlinger this week?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he's legitimately mobile. Ran for like 2,000 yards and a lot of touchdowns at Texas. I don't know.
I think he set a record. It was like 16 or something like that, wasn't it?
In one season. For his career, I think it was like 30 or 40 touchdowns.
Maybe that's the record. Yeah.
33 touchdowns, 1,900 rushing yards across 4 years. His last 3 years, 16, 7, and 8 rushing touchdowns. I mean, this is obviously in the college level, but one of the things I did note in Stealing Signals this week and kind of looking at his profile, he has not thrown an NFL pass yet. But last year, was active for some games, and they gave him 3 carries in 3 separate games, 1 carry in each. And I remember writing about him a little bit last year in Stealing Signals that it was a response to Taysom Hill. It felt so much like that. They basically gave him sort of a Taysom Hill role or some of those packages, and he had a couple of design carries. The only reason I bring that up is it is the same coaching staff. And that willingness to put in this quarterback in a run role, I think does speak to one of the things I talked about this offseason is we talk about mobile quarterbacks in one big bucket, but don't talk about how mobile that might be or what that might mean. There is a difference between Lamar Jackson's mobility and how that manifests and how we can have 100-yard and a touchdown rushing games compared to, I mean, even Kyler, who can have 100-yard
comparison right now.
Yeah, he can have 100-yard and 1 touchdown games, but they don't deploy him as a weapon as a runner. They don't call a lot of design runs. He scrambles. It's when they get into these crazy game scripts that he can have a lot of rushing. He can also have very little rushing. I think the Colts are going to deploy Ehlinger. I mean, best guess, but again, it's a complete mystery box. But deploy him as a rushing weapon. I think the whole move, and especially them choosing him over Foles, says this lack of QB mobility, the amount of pressure that they've been taking. Matt Ryan's had a massively high pressure rate, but in part because he's so damn immobile. And so is Nick Foles. That's not going to change anything. They're going to be able to run a little bit of a different offense. I think it's going to be more run heavy. There's going to be more Jonathan Taylor, and Ehlinger's mobility is going to probably help Taylor's efficiency. We see that the mobile quarterbacks impact the efficiency of the running backs. That's another part to the whole landscape. I mean, Daniel Jones, just using him as a running weapon has probably been a positive for Saquon, even though Saquon's incredibly good. We've seen Jalen Hurts positively impact Miles Sanders, I believe. There's other examples. Marcus Mariota's threat to run has impacted the way teams can crash, inside runs against the Falcons, because he'll pull it and he'll go around the edge, and he's had that. He's had a couple good runs.
He scored a couple touchdowns that way too.
Right. And so you have guys like Caleb Huntley, who's just a big, not very athletic player, running effectively, running efficiently. That's impacted by Mariota's mobility. So I think that's going to be a real positive for Jonathan Taylor this week, who has not been particularly efficient so far. But I also think, again, going back to the Taysom Hill comp from last year and the ways that they used Ehlinger, I think that was a pretty good indication that this guy is going to be used on the higher end of the mobility spectrum. It'll be really interesting to see how they run their offense. I think this could be like a really run heavy game, which would not be great for Ehlinger's ceiling necessarily. If it's, I mean, it would basically be like Tim Tebow, right? Like he might end up with 10 carries and not really throwing, or Taysom Hill or whatever. He's had some starting games where he's thrown 14 passes or something. But if it is a little bit more balanced, he still runs 7 to 10 times, and you need him to run effectively and efficiently, but runs for 60 yards. I think there's definite touchdown potential rushing for him as well. I mean, using some of that mobility in the red zone, a lot of teams are doing that with the quarterbacks. He could have a multiple touchdown rushing game. There's no reason, I would expect that he couldn't. If he has that type of rushing and they throw enough, right? And he did have a really good preseason throwing the ball, but he needs to throw for 200 yards and a TD probably too to have a real ceiling.
Yeah, to be relevant there.
That I'm really excited to see what they do with Ehlinger, because they seem like the fact that they are so pot committed. They're like, hey, even when Ryan's back, Ehlinger's the guy. And part of that's probably because the season right now is a bit of a wash. They don't have a good record right now. But I don't know. I don't think that they look at the Giants and be like, okay, we want to be just like the Giants, but I see them as their best case scenario, being like the Giants, where they've been able to run efficiently with Saquon. And then you have the threat of Daniel Jones. I mean, there was that sequence, that drive that they had at the end of the game with the Jaguars. I saw Daniel Orlovsky tweeted the every single play that they had on that drive, where it was just power run to Saquon, just over and over, and then that unleashed a little bit of a bootleg with Daniel Jones, and he was able to pick up 17 yards like that. So I don't think that they're necessarily looking at the Giants and be like, hey, they're the blueprint, because no one should honestly be saying that. but I mean, you can't help but think it's just a brand. It's almost like a brand new offense we're getting. It's a whole new team that we have not seen now this year. And that's
we talked about that with the Jets, and it proved to be true. The way that they were playing with Flacco and the way they were going to play with Wilson, a lot of us, point. I mean, I was writing about it in Signals. This is going to be way different. It's going to be way different in terms of receiver targets. It's going to be way expect a huge change, and it has been. And this, I mean, that's what you're saying. It's going to be a massive change. The Colts right now are tied for the NFL lead in completions. That's going way down going forward. I mean, they're not Matt Ryan's been throwing a ton of passes because he's immobile and he has no arm strength. They've all been underneath, and he's been completing a lot of these short, easy completions, not for a lot of gains, but in PPR or even half PPR, adds a lot of value to the skill players that he's just dishing the ball out that much. That's not going to happen anymore. I mean, the extent of that is going to be interesting. Are they a sub 20 pass attempt team? Are they, sub 30? Can they hit to 30 pass attempts? That's the big question. I mean, I think they're probably dogs to throw 30 passes this week.
And that's a similar conversation you can have with the Jets now that Hall is gone. That was their identity, or they wanted that to be their identity. It was just Breece Hall, is the offense. Now he's gone. I can't imagine they think that they can just plug in Michael Carter and do the same thing. They're going to be forced to throw more. So hopefully that is something that can be done effectively. I don't trust Zach Wilson necessarily, but I think if you are somebody that's holding Elijah Moore, that's just another frustrating reason that you have to keep playing him.
There's definitely a shift coming there for that reason.
Yeah, and I don't know that he's a play for battle royales necessarily, but he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. There's going to be philosophical changes in a big way there as well.
I imagine Garrett Wilson is pretty overlooked too. I mean, for me, if you wanted to make
I don't think he has an ADP.
Yeah, if you want to make an interesting play for battle royales now on that what you just described for the Jets, it would be through Wilson, because he's done more to earn targets and I think it has already shown more of a ceiling this year.
Chad doing the Lord's work here, bringing up all this stuff here for us and playing right into Gretch's point here that the only time we've seen a QB1 be the highest scoring or first round QB be the highest scoring QB on the slate was week 4 with Josh Allen in that. I think
looks
that
like
was
week 5 too, right? And week 1.
Week 5. So it's been Allen twice.
Oh, sorry.
There you go. Allen
week 1
twice.
doesn't count because it's only 6-person drafts. Look,
Oh yeah.
That's true. Mahomes did kind of go crazy, but yeah,
this has been high profile names for the large part. I mean, for a large part, and I do. But what I would emphasize is 7 data points, right? Like I mean, it's the fact that all these quarterbacks are being drafted so high is in part because the top quarterbacks have been hitting. Like we would expect probably the data to back. That's what's led to this trend. If a whole bunch of late round picks or undrafted quarterbacks were succeeding right now and the whole landscape was different, then we wouldn't be seeing quarterbacks going in the first rounds in these.
That's a really good point.
The question is what's going to happen next, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. I can tell you what's going to happen. Daniel Jones is going for 100 on the ground this week, and he's going to break the slate. I can tell you what's going to happen. I want to hit on a couple of hot button names here. You wrote them up as noise in the Tony Pollard usage because of the Zeke injury, but now we kind of are trending in the direction of the Zeke injury. We've seen his ADP. He's the highest riser so far this week. He's risen about 9-ish spots, going from kind of like undrafted landscape to coming into drafted. ETR put him as their running back 2 in the projection model. So I'm just anticipating more and more steam going Pollard's way. I'm not definitively sure how to attack it yet. I think it's to eat it at the low ADP threshold now, and then kind of as it gets steamed over the course of the weekend, pivot a little bit. But I'm thinking, exposure now, pivot later kind of deal. But what do you think just from a pure, football standpoint? We saw the Bears get gashed on the ground last week. What are we thinking with Pollard this week, Gretch?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, like for anyone who's not familiar with my article, and maybe everyone, as you guys said, that you've been telling everyone to read it, but every game I highlight the signal and noise stuff, stats that are signal, stats that are noise. The thing that I called noise was the fact that Pollard played more snaps, in the sense of kind of expecting people who didn't see the Zeke injury. I didn't think it was that bad when I was writing it because he came back into the game. He was hobbled, but he came back in. That might think that this was like a shift, that Pollard's now got to be the lead back going forward. Because especially in my article I've been writing about, hopefully that might happen, or there's some potential for that. So I said this week, Pollard getting to 65% of the snaps, probably a little bit noisy because Zeke was actually banged up in the game and then returned. Obviously, completely different relative to a landscape where Zeke might not play. I mean, what that means, again, it's very similar to Sam Ehlinger. It's like, we have a mystery box. We don't know. Are they going to get another running back involved as a between the tackles runner? Pollard's role is going to increase, right? And they've used him up the middle some, but like largely the way that I've described this is it's been Zeke as the straight line downhill runner, and he's been somewhat effective at that. I've made fun of him a little bit and gotten some criticism on Twitter and places because people see his stats, say his yards per carry is very good, this and that. I mean, most of it's because he's basically just running straight ahead and like falling. I think my joke was every Zeke run is him slowly falling down, and whether it's like a 3-yard run or a 6-yard run is how long it takes him to fall down.
That's exactly what it looked like.
It's exactly what it looks like. And people are like, he's making guys miss. He's not making anyone miss. He's just bouncing off people and falling down. And sometimes it goes 6 yards. The question is, will Pollard get a large percentage of that type of work? It's not necessarily suited to his skill set, his size, whether they'll use one of these other dudes that they'll obviously have up in, a lot of interior rushing work. They did give Pollard some inside the 5 carries last week and before Zeke's injury. I mean, it was in the first half and then got 2 in a row, but didn't convert them as well. So that's not great. Like, he didn't show that he was effective in close and inside the 5 and in those tight spaces and inside the line. It's a question of how will they use him if they use him in a massive role. And this is the thesis for him, obviously, is if Zeke's out, he can be a monster because he has one of the things I think we really overlook with running back, and I talked about this week as well, is like the skill element, the efficient play element. Pollard has clear displayed ability to hit on 60, 70-yard touchdown runs. He's shown that. He showed that last year on like a kick return TD. I mean, he can do I think that was the Thanksgiving slate where he had like a kick return TD and also like a good rushing game.
Yeah, it was definitely an island game because he absolutely buried me that day.
Yeah, he's got explosive play potential. It's basically like what we saw out of Ken Walker the last couple of weeks. I mean, Ken Walker's done a lot, but if he can hit on a 60 or 70-yard TD like Ken Walker's done, like he's obviously going to get there, right? Like that's a 13-point play on its own. We know he has that potential. We know he's going to get more opportunities. The question is, how many more opportunities is he going to get, and how likely is it that he's going to hit on that type of play? They're playing the Bears. I don't really like this fantasy landscape overall. A lot of teams that have played the Bears have matched the Bears' really run-heavy style and have had lower pass rate over expected, more negative than they tend to. Those individual teams tend to. They go really run-heavy against the Bears, which is interesting. We didn't see that with the Patriots. The Patriots actually threw against them a lot. It'll be an interesting game, but the Cowboys have a good defense too. I like the under in the game. That still doesn't mean Pollard can't get there. If it's a very run-heavy game, he can have 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's like I said, it's a bit of a mystery box. It's already a mystery box with him, whether he can hit on the explosive plays. And then it's, will he get the goal line carries? Will he get enough of the inside runs and enough of a roll increase that we can actually feel really comfortable he's going to get 15-plus touches? I think that's the most likely scenario. That's obviously what ETR is projecting. There's probably some concern that some other back takes some of those, just like pound it between the tackles carries.
Yeah, that mystery. Who is that other back? The Quadri Allison or something like that, or like.
Right. Yeah. I think that's my guess because he has a little bit of NFL experience. But there's who's that other dude? Malik Davis that I don't really know much about.
I don't know much about him either. Yeah. Either way, probably not relevant to our player pool. But it's just whether
Alston's a big physical back. That's why I think he's he would make sense to take, like, from a size perspective, some of those Zeke carries
and be that Zeke fall down at the goal line guy, and then we lose the.
He basically is Zeke at this point. Everyone who thinks Zeke's good, like I think Quadri Allison is basically a 1-for-1 replacement.
That's actually so. Nez,
you're muted, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he could put on that 21 jersey and no one would know the difference.
I don't think put the dark visor on. It's like, oh, hey, Zeke's looking pretty good today.
Maybe
got a little extra burst.
Like that, when that lineman, I think there's a training camp meme, like the lineman put on Zeke's jersey and people legitimately did not know that it wasn't Zeke at first. They were like, wow, he put on weight. It was not surprising.
That's ugly. One more I want to hit on, and then let's jump in some drafts and kind of feel it out on the fly because it's way more fun. Let's jump into the wide receiver position for a second, and I want to talk about DeAndre Hopkins because I think his usage was very, very interesting last week. I didn't think he would come back and be the target monster that he was. I thought their passing game was struggling enough so that he'd be heavily utilized, but not in the capacity in which we saw. I didn't think the slot snaps were going to be there in that capacity. I thought he would just be like an outside rotating X guy, and AJ Green would still be in the fold. And we saw something completely different. We saw his first 100-yard game in damn near 2 years. And what can we expect in what we think is a real cake matchup and juicy game environment coming up against Minnesota this week?
Well, I mean, we have, again, this huge gap at every position at wide receiver. It's, setting aside Michael Thomas and Marquise Brown, who are now injured, we have 6 guys that have averaged more than, this is PPR, but more than 19.5 PPR points per game. And then no one else that's above 16.5. You have this 3-point gap, and the 6 guys that are above are the top 5 by ADP, the big 3, and then Diggs and Devonta Adams, and then Tyreek Hill, who was a second-round pick by ADP in season long. So you have good players hitting that we expected to hit. Hopkins is a guy who came out in PPR, immediately was a 20-point-per-game guy that first week. He obviously wasn't in half. But, in a landscape where we haven't seen a lot of 10-catch games in this type of production, I think you have to be willing to bet on it. The 48% target share isn't going to be consistent. Obviously, that's just an absurd number. But at the same time, they pretty clearly were like, look, we're happy to have DeAndre Hopkins back. We have not had a lot of playmakers. We've been throwing all these underneath targets to Zach Ertz, who basically just runs 5 yards and turns around and catches a bunch of passes. It's interesting. You're probably going to see more Robbie Anderson on the outside this week. He didn't play a ton on a short week after the trade. He's got 10 days to get up to speed. he's going to probably threaten downfield at least some, right, and help fill that Marquise Brown speed void. You're probably going to see Rondale Moore kick back into the slot a decent amount too, though, as a result. They do move Hopkins around a little. I mean, I'm willing to bet on it. I'm willing to essentially just buy the 1 week trend. But I don't think you expect it to be as extreme. Like that's one that I also called noise. I called the 48% target share noise specifically as it related to everyone else, as it relates to how many targets were available for Zach Ertz or Rondale Moore or anyone else. That he's had games like that in the past in Arizona as well, where like they see something or they have something and they're like, we can just throw to him every play. They're giving us this and we're going to do that. And they're willing to do that. Most defenses are not going to allow you to throw 50% of your passes to the same player. They're going to do something to stop that, right?
Is that a bad idea from a defensive side?
Typically not great.
Do you think in the context of this contest, do you think he warrants like, top 5 wide receiver off the board and like top 10 ADP after just 1 week, or does that feel like, hey, we're just buying a box score there?
Well, the only guys going ahead of him are 4 of the names that I just said are, those consistent scores above the fray.
Yep.
The other ones are not on the slate. And so, I think he has to be in that equation right after those top 4 go off. I think AJ Brown needs to be in that equation. I think Jalen Waddle needs to be in that equation. They're right there too. I would probably take Brown over him, but I just love AJ Brown.
Yeah. Shocking development.
Half PPR, like I don't want. Hopkins did have a little bit of an underneath role. You're a little bit of an accumulator at that point.
Did he have a low ADOT in his first?
Brown.
Did he have a low ADOT in his first start there?
It wasn't crazy low. It was definitely below average. Let me look up the exact number. The wide receiver average. Well, when I last looked up was like 11. It's come down a little. I think it's like 10.5. He, I want to say, was in like the 9 or 8.5 range. Let's see. 9.4. So, yeah, not super low, but like a full yard below wide receiver average. And that includes traditional slot receivers who tend to be lower volume, lower level. Like a DeAndre Hopkins type, I typically expect to be at 11. And he was at like 9.4.
Okay. Actually, while we're on ADOT, something that we were talking about beforehand, just like behind closed door or whatever, was Kadarius Toney a high ADOT guy coming out? Do you remember?
He didn't really catch a lot of passes in college, but
Fair
I can
enough.
tell you what his ADOT was. I got a college database here.
Oh, that's sick.
Of course he does. Of course he does.
He didn't. It's going to be pretty volatile. His ADOTs by year, very low. 4.4, 6.9, 2.1, 7.7. The 2.1 was only on 52 routes.
Okay.
And the 4.4 was only on 65 routes. So, 2020 is the year, that was his senior year, that he actually ran 373 routes. Every other year was under 150 routes. In that year, he was at 7.7. Still very low, but it was his highest number. But,
interesting.
Even lower than Hopkins.
I'm sure you guys, just the fact that you're doing a show with Sean before this and the news broke, did you guys hit it in stealing bananas?
We talked about it. Well, it's funny. Sean was setting up a conversation about Juju, and I was like, well, we got breaking news, Sean. We're going to have to talk about the Chiefs a little bit differently right now. We did talk about that. That'll release, I think, a little like today. So
okay, cool. We'll have to listen to that. But
can
you give me like a 2-second Cole's notes? I want people to listen to that, obviously. But 2 seconds.
Well, we were just reacting. I think there's a lot unknown, right?
Right.
His health. Everyone's joking that he's going to immediately be healthy. I pretty much buy that. You mentioned at the top of the show the Tyreek Hill role. I was kind of thinking as you were saying that, I was like, what do you mean by that? Because like the Tyreek Hill role shifted as the defenses shifted, as I was talking about a little bit ago.
Right.
From 2019 and earlier, 2020 and earlier, in season 2021 started to really shift the rest of the way last year. He was, did more around the line of scrimmage. I think, you mentioned that's the template with Mecole Hardman. I think you're absolutely right. Like that's the stuff that Mecole Hardman's been taking. MVS had a shift this week that was good to see, I think, for his value, even though he only had 4 targets, where he's been asked to do a lot more in the short intermediate range, which also was, where Tyreek was operating later last year. And MVS is just not that receiver and has not been good. He's looked really bad in in that role. He had only 4 targets this week, had a season high air yards, first game over 100 because he had a 26 ADOT, just this deep threat ADOT, over 25 yards average depth, and hit for 100 yards on it, right? Like had his most explosive game of the year. His previous season I ADOT was 13.3. I mean, he had a lot of games already this year where he was under that 11 ADOT. And in a deep threat, you're thinking 13, 14 every week. So to see them kind of shift him and say, look, you're a deep threat now, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then you add in this Kadarius Toney acquisition and you're saying, well, he's probably going to start to eat up. I think some of what MVS had been doing in the short and intermediate range, some of what Mecole had been doing, to the extent that he gets up to speed, there is opportunity for him to take some of Mecole snaps and take some of that opportunity that MVS – and then Juju obviously operates in that range as well. It's not necessarily great for Juju either, but, I mean, in a world where Toney gets up to speed, learns the playbook, which has been, concern for him, and is actually playing, which I think is going to take more time than some of the people that I saw initial reactions on Twitter, like this is going to be great for Toney right away. I think we're talking about more of a long-term play for the Chiefs, like a playoff weapon type of play.
Yeah.
Or at least like a week 11, 12 plus type of play. I don't think we're going to see him crush in week 9, 10. I won't probably be on him right out of the bye. He does have a little extra time this week with the bye, but I mean, it's already Thursday. He's going to get into the building by like Friday, Saturday, and he's going to have a week to ramp up.
Yeah. I saw Matt Harmon with like a pretty interesting take that was talking about how like Hardman is a free agent after next year. Juju, I think, is only on a 1-year deal. So like it is somewhat of like a longer term play. But I think they have to think like, of course, like, like you said, with Tyreek Hill, it was bit memey at the beginning, but there is something to say about, okay, well, they made Tyreek Hill go underneath and be like a yak god, like because they were just like taking everything way over the top. They're trying to do that with Juju. He's broken free like a couple times, but he's just not that guy. Like he's a bruiser. He's not like the elusive type of guy. So I do think that there is, I mean,
and I said that on Stealing Bananas, like spoiler alert. That's what I was saying is I wonder what you meant by the Tyreek Hill role, because I think a lot of people hear that and immediately think Tyreek Hill's deep speed.
Yeah,
right?
they kind of.
I think that's going to be MVS still.
Yeah,
but I said what you said on the show, that the ways that Tyreek Hill was used late last year underneath and as a yak god is what you would expect Toney to be doing.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going to ask him to.
That's a fun profile, like just in general, like just from like like maybe not from our fantasy perspective and maybe not playing him in these contests or DFS for a while, but just in terms of like from football standpoint, like, yeah, I just want to see that guy with the ball in his hands coming across the middle of the field and see what he can do to make people miss. Right.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's the best.
I got two more that I wanted to hit on. I lied. I want to jump in these drafts. But I want like the 2-second Cole's Notes version of what we're thinking.
Given a 2-second.
Yeah, I know. It's true.
You know who you're asking?
I know. Yeah.
Every show I go on, people are like, all right, quick hitters. I'm like, you're not getting a quick hitter from me. Have you ever read my writing? Like,
yeah. 2,000 words in part 1.
Just on the
Bananas. We'll just, I mean, my introductions are longer than most articles. Like, Jesus.
I love
Stealing Bananas, we go like 90 minutes and we're like, okay, we're going to do 45-minute show this time. We got stuff to do today. And like somehow that always makes us go longer.
Oh man, I love it. You touched a little bit on the Josh Jacobs kind of miss from a season-long perspective and whatever, but I found it the whole time I was reading. So I read that one, and then I read because I think that was in Signals, and then the other portion when we were reading the running back one that's free to everybody, which I thought was a very cool, insightful piece about how we've always joked about running backs not mattering, but maybe they do from a talent perspective. I kept thinking about the crossover between those two, between Josh Jacobs, like he had the draft capital. We thought he was talented at Alabama, but then for some reason we all just kind of dismissed it and they don't pick up his 5th-year option. And we're kind of like, this guy's not talented anymore, but maybe he is. I don't know. Like, what are you seeing there, Gretch? Like, just in terms of, was our process wrong from a fantasy community in discrediting him as just kind of like a zero or a dead zone kind of guy too early, like prematurely? And now is he worth, like, he's going, running back 1, 2, or 3 in these contests now? Is that fair, or is he still the guy we thought he was in the summer?
I think it's fair. I think that's what his role is now. I've talked about this a lot with my buddy Mike Leone, who people who have watched ship chasing for a long time know that we sometimes get really into the weeds and some pretty nuanced.
He called him an alpha play on our show like early, and he popped that week too.
Oh, I love it. I think Josh Jacobs is hit in two different ways that makes him a little bit unique and could give the wrong impression. In terms of what we're doing now, I think he's where he is and should be valued this way. In terms of what like the process stuff was, the first way is when I did the projection show with Leone at ETR, we've done the last couple of years where we go by every team, we talk about our projections. We both acknowledged we were projecting him for fewer targets this year than he had receptions last year, which obviously a chunk of the targets aren't going to even be receptions. That's just a way of saying we were projecting his receiving role to significantly decrease. It was surprising last year. He was fifth among all running backs in receptions. That's something that for a couple of years with Josh Jacobs wasn't there. And is a huge part. I mean, the readers of Stealing Signals will know I'm always talking about high value touches. It's a huge part of what creates running back ceilings. Maybe not so much in half, right? It's slightly less important, but it's still important. You're still gaining yardage on the receptions. You're typically gaining more yardage per reception than you are per run, and you're getting the half point. So it's still a much more valuable touch than a low value rush anywhere outside the goal line. Obviously, those goal line rushes are probably the most valuable touches you can get, and he has always had a lock on that. The lack of receiving was a big reason he was down in 2021, and he actually caught a decent number of passes and was a surprising player. And then he was still down this year. But like we got a lot of talk and a lot of reporting out of Raiders camp that they were going to use a James White rule, to the extent that it was like New England's not going to have a James White role. Like we were starting to hear that they're going to kind of shift their whole offense. And they were talking like, Sean brought this up on our first pod this week, that a lot of the reporting this offseason from New England was they were going to try to be less obvious in tipping their play calls, run pass, where they sometimes have backs in certain roles. And as soon as James White comes on the field, everyone knows it's a pass play. Okay. We were getting that reporting out of New England, which was a pretty clear, implication that Josh McDaniels was the one that preferred that, right? And so then we were also hearing reporting out of Las Vegas that they were going to use either Brandon Bolden or Amir Abdullah, even their transactions, to bring in both Bolden over from New England, who they used in that role last year, and Abdullah, who's a guy who has been, a pretty good pass catcher over the last couple of years. You go look what he did with Carolina last year, caught more passes down the stretch than I think people realize. It looked pretty clear that somebody was going to play that role for the Raiders. I think Josh Jacobs played his way into the role he's in. He wasn't even in this role in week one. It wasn't clear. He did run more routes than I thought, and I was already talking about him positively in stealing signals right away, which I was a complete miss for me in draft season. But he ran more routes in week one and in week two than I expected, and was starting to talk positively of him. That's continued to expand. You look at his snap shares, 60%, 72, 64, and then 89, 81, 80 the last 3 weeks. He's been an 80% snap share guy. That's what we're looking for at running back, the guys that don't come off the field. Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. We don't know that for McCaffrey in San Francisco necessarily, but that's the part of the profile is the guy going to be, that's one of the most predictive stats for running back scoring is just snap share. Like, is the guy on the field this much? Is he up around 80 to 90% of the snaps? That's elite. You don't see a lot of running backs go over 90%, ever, even in one game samples. I think the season high for any player is like 92% this year. So anyway, 3 straight games, 80% plus is a big part of it. And that pass game part of it has developed. The flip side is the skill thing that you mentioned. Maybe we were wrong about him. He wasn't an elite profile guy because he did kind of split time in college. He wasn't a workhorse. That is something that shows to be predictive, that if you can handle huge amounts of touches, then you can handle huge amounts of touches at the next level. It's like a big reason that people were on Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. Right. He split some work at Alabama, and then size, speed, and everything for a first-round running back, not like breaking charts in terms of athleticism. He wasn't Jonathan Taylor athletically. He wasn't. And so, you have the first-round draft capital, but he wasn't a guy that we're like, okay, this is a generational running back prospect, right? Even Breece Hall this year was a guy who tested athletically more, better than was sort of expected in a lot of us. And we talked about it on Bananas. I know Sean was like, it takes him from, one bucket of player to potentially like a Le'Veon Bell type, because he had the receiving in his profile, or an Adrian Peterson even, or Jonathan Taylor. He's not quite as big as those guys, but from a size speed perspective, suddenly after his combine, Breece Hall changed. That was really early in the offseason, but it made him look so much better. Jacobs didn't really necessarily have that profile. And so there's reasons to not necessarily buy him from a generational talent perspective. Came out, was an efficient runner in his rookie year, 4.8 yards per carry. Last 2 years, 3.9 and 4 yards per carry. I mean, he just sort of looked like a plodder. And then when you add in the lack of significant receiving ceiling other than 2021, which everyone was expecting was sort of a fluke, then so we hit on both sides. He's now averaging 5.7 yards per carry. I mean, that's like rarefied air. That's probably going to regress, but he's like a lot of the peripherals and stuff that you would look at for rushing efficiency are very strong. He's doing a lot after contact and all those things. That tends to happen anytime a guy's averaging 5.7 yards per carry, but he's been incredibly efficient. He is playing the best ball of his career as a player. And there was a role miss in terms of the way that we were projecting him in the offseason. So I think there's two things that played into it. I don't
think it's a miss. I don't think it's a miss. There was so much now that I'm thinking
in terms of the outcome, right?
Oh, the outcome was. Sure. And there was I was like, I wanted to draft way more Josh Jacobs than I did draft. And then a lot of the reason I didn't is because it started off when he played that first preseason game. And everyone's like, oh, his role isn't locked. They drafted Zamir White. Amir Abdullah was there. They brought in Devontae Adams, and I think all of that was just like, okay, like I can't like ignore like all this like negative news. But I
pick up his fifth year.
Yeah, and I tweeted like I was like I just don't get it. Like I liked him as like I know that all the like his profile and stuff like it is what it is. I liked him. I just thought that he was a good play, and then. I think part of it is like you see a little bit with like the AJ Brown effect in Philadelphia where like Miles Sanders is like running really efficiently this year. Like how much of the attention of like an alpha wideout, how much of that does that open up like the rest of the offense just because of the attention that draws? I'm not sure that that's like 1-to-1 as far as like why Josh Jacobs is having so much success, but obviously the first and foremost is the workload, which
I think that's a great point. I think that's an absolutely great point. And we're seeing the defenses try to take away the deep passing games and let teams have underneath stuff. Last week, the Raiders had their biggest negative pass rate over expected coming out of the bye, -7 pass rate over expected, even in a game that was close. Houston led through 3 quarters. They wind up winning by 18 because they have a late pick six. They outscore Houston 21-0 in the fourth quarter. But it was pretty clear coming out of the bye. They were like, based on the way teams are playing us, we're going to give Josh Jacobs a ton of carries. That's what we're going to do. I think that gets back to your point about how Adams impacts the way that teams are going to play him. Absolutely.
I think from our standpoint, then that like it's pretty safe to assume like we can just kind of block out the pass and just be like, man, this is the kind of guy we want to be investing in on a weekly basis when he's getting 80% of the snaps he is now. Yeah.
And we're talking about a lot of different types of offenses and how they're responding to the ways the defenses are playing. The Raiders showing this out of the bye, a willingness to be more run heavy. And like I said, I think he played his way into a larger snap role because he was good, and they were like, "This is what's working for us." I really do think just in these first 7 weeks, the Raiders have sort of evolved their approach, or McDaniels from what he was planning right away in week 1 to what he's doing now, and he's leaning into this is what's working for us, and this guy's playing really good football as our running back. Like, yeah, you buy that, especially on a weekly basis. As soon as it could shift a little bit, like he can start to be less efficient. They could start to force more stuff to Devontae Adams or whatever and shift the way that they're operating. But right now, like it's very clear when you think about what they're talking about in their building and how they want to approach things, that's the thing that is, that they're game planning for and that they want to highlight as part of their offense.
Yeah. I mean, it could just smash again this week too. Like the way this week is setting up, it's just like,
with the Saints being like, I feel not necessarily strong defensively. Like I'm so scared to call them bad, but like the fact that they've been able to like get gashed by a lot of teams is definitely like an interesting 100%. Scenario. So I do think like Jacobs ADP this week is warranted, and you can go ahead and jump in here.
Let's rip.
Just talking like running back talent and like what other things can change this year. I think an obvious one right now, but I don't think it's going to like play out as we hope, is the Cardinals with Benjamin like getting his chance to like be the guy. Actually, like had a great game last week, but the week before that he wasn't super efficient. So I don't know that he necessarily has shown enough to like take that over. And plus, like he's a smaller guy. Like I think James Conner's going to continue to have somewhat of a role there, but it would be very cool for us in this
What's the deal with
to
Connor's
see
health?
Benjamin take a step forward.
100%. What's the deal with his health?
He practiced this week, I think.
Yeah, limited yesterday.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Oh, yeah, we've been talking about that.
Like you said, like, again, get back to snap share. 87% of the snaps in his first start week 6, 73% last week. The efficiency wasn't there week 6. It was there week 7. But I mean, that's something that I called noise in signals that after week 6, like he had the role that can hit. And then it did in week 7. If Connor's back, you don't know if he's going to get I mean, obviously you wouldn't expect him to be in the 70 to 90% snap range like he was the last 2 weeks. You'd expect him to be, even if Connor is limited, you'd expect Eno to be in the, I don't know, 55% at most, kind of.
Yeah. That's what I would expect and hope. And especially with Cliff, you know, like we can't expect anything like rational out of him, you know, like you can't rely on him to like make the right decision. So we're really gonna have to just see it. But
I mean, for the year, Eno's been good. I mean, he had some explosive runs earlier on.
Yeah,
he's got a 4.6 yards per carry right now, which I mean, it's a very fluky stat, and especially in small samples. But I do think can impact coaching decisions, basically. Like when guys are running effectively, they're like, yeah, this is working. Or whether they're looking at yards per carry or they're saying this guy's actually being successful on the field or however they're responding to it, it's a barometer that I use sometimes sort of in that way that it might impact usage.
Yeah, he's done what he's needed to do when given that opportunity. Yeah, if you have Underdog pulled up on your phone and your browser at the same time, whatever one you pulled up last is going to, I believe, take the notification and you'll miss it on whatever device was there first. Maybe vice versa.
I didn't have it open, and then I just got the notification that we were on the clock on my phone, and then I was like, weird. Yeah, that was bizarre. Oh well, we got Cooper Kupp to start this build.
Yeah, nothing wrong there.
Yeah. We'll
feels
bounce
like a
back.
Good pick. Is he good? He's good.
Yeah,
right?
He feels all right. He feels well. Yeah, I see you in the full draft. Here we go.
Thank you, Blake. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Guys, my co-host didn't even mention this nice fresh cut, and Silas comes in.
You have a fresh cut like every time we come on. I've never seen you not looking crispy. Like,
actually, you know what, Silas? She got me a little
You're
tight
on the clock.
yesterday.
Now you can make your pick.
She got me a little tight. You don't have.
Do we want to run back with CMC or take AJ Brown?
Go CMC, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're the man who's you're gonna tell me no AJ Brown.
I mean, you can take AJ Brown too. Absolutely.
This is actually shiny new toy, baby.
If you have Kupp, you have to take CMC, right? He's scoring 2 touchdowns this week. It's just it has to happen.
I like that. That's spicy. I mean, he's my highest-owned player right now because we were getting him quite late.
The annoying thing is the way that the 49ers and Rams play each other. Like this game's probably going to be 20-17. It's going to piss us all off. But we already took Kupp, so we're taking 40... CMC. We're playing this game to be 31-28. Come on.
I think the total's like 42 or something like a very gross range, but it's fine.
Let's talk about his role in general. Like that was one of the players. Oh, we got AJ Brown anyways.
Thanks, guys.
Oh man, there's no discussion here.
Very tight.
There is no discussion here.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously did that on purpose because he started Justin Jefferson. He was going to need to, hit running back.
See,
that's
why we get the big bros minds on here, man. This is why we
I was definitely thinking about that.
We would have clicked AJ Brown like a bunch of idiots. And
could you imagine?
Oh, you love it. Gretch, what do you think about I don't know what to like. It's CMC. It's CMC, right? And everybody read your article last week, and it's like, he might just be the most important player in fantasy, period. But what do you actually see, like on like a micro level with that team, like 80% snap share, same role,
right?
Same
so snap
everything?
share is going to determine whether he's the most important player in fantasy. I mean, I think it's that simple. If he's in a 55-60% snap share range, like with some consistency, because they're still using Jeff Wilson, they're maybe still incorporating a little bit of Tyrion Davis-Price, which they did somewhat bizarrely last week. I mean, if you make this trade, I think you're kind of already admitting, we're on the clock.
What about Pollard?
I like Pollard.
Yeah.
We could do that, or
Fourth
we could
round? Didn't you just say he was the second highest projected on ETR? I mean,
geez.
Yeah. Say less.
Leone second. Yeah. Now before we answer the CMC question,
you got to tell me what we're starting, because I don't do these drafts.
So now we only have our onesies left.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a 6-man. Got it.
It's 6 by 6 basically. So Yeah. I mean, we gravitate. I don't know. It's kind of a theoretical question to ask in half PPR. We fluctuate. We've had this debate many a time with many people now on whether we should be building 1-3s or we should be building 2-2s with the running back and wide receivers. But like, I don't know. And prioritizing the onesies is a big question, like we were hinting at earlier.
It's probably player dependent. I mean, getting Tony Pollard in the 4th round is changes that equation.
And wide receiver does feel like it falls off a little bit this week comparatively.
I think so, yeah.
Do you guys have Numi? You've been quiet for a hot minute. Do we want to go double stack with Cup and go Stafford Higbee, or is that too gal brain? Should we take Goddard here?
I don't think it's gal brain. I'd say Higbee or Danny Dimes.
Dimes.
Oh,
Just naked Dimes.
Muted.
Yeah, we got to unmute. There you go.
I was going to say Daniel Jones.
All right, sure.
Yeah.
That's 2 votes for Dimes, and
they're committing to that role by trading away Tony. They're saying, Danny, you better tuck and run, baby, because you are the offense.
It makes
so you guys don't mind going
fun.
unstacked because we're not taking a Giants tight end.
Yeah,
nope.
No way.
We're fine with naked Jones for sure. The thing about these contests, Gretch, is they're so top heavy. Like we've talked about how it's literally like 10,000 buy-ins for first, and then like 10th place is we're literally trying to hit. Like 10th place is less than 1%.
There will be weeks where the top scoring quarterback doesn't necessarily have a receiver that's in the optimal, right?
Right.
Sort of
yeah. And what we've seen a lot with, like last week was a triple stack that won, and it was kind of the first time that you saw that Burrow triple get home and a low owned Tyler Boyd. But we've really found that you're trying to hit a 6-leg parlay in some respects. Now, definitely when we're building out multiple teams, we want correlation rules and we want some stacks and that sort of thing. But we're not married to the notion. That's for sure.
Got it.
Yeah. And I would say this week too, for better or worse, everybody's going to be stacking because there's no like top option. So stacking is like very viable and very easy to be done in these rooms. So just as like a argument for unstacking, getting unique.
Do we like a Freiermuth bring back? Do we like an Ertz by himself?
I would take out because I'm a masochist, but
let's go. Yo, it's your team. We're going with the gas. Let's go, baby. Let's go, Gretch.
So much pain. Just so much pain.
No, man.
This team's going to hit, and Kyle
at least
10 receiving yards, and it's going to be the reason we lose.
Dude, I was up pretty high last week. Like I was top 60 last week, and out of all the entries, and part of what sunk me was Kyle, MF, and Pitts with his
There's
boys.
No way the Falcons actually throw the ball against the Panthers.
That's actually a good point.
But if they do,
we're on him early. We got that week.
But it's going to be unique because nobody wants to take him.
No one wants to take him.
His draft ownership.
You cannot tell me he doesn't have 150-yard upside still. I mean, that's the thing that I will argue anyone on. He still has massive targets per out run rates. He still has the high ADOT. He can still hit explosive plays. Based on his profile and everything.
If he gets in at the goal line last week with like that little alligator arm reach, maybe we're having a different conversation.
Well, and even the play before that, they ran a little play action release play, and he beat the defender, and then the DN, like he was blocking for a second, then beat him, and the DN just bear hugged him for like 5 yards into the end zone, and they called the defensive holding. Obviously, he was like, "I'm beat. I'm going to hold him." If he's not such an asshole and just lets Pitts run free, it's a touchdown. I mean, it was just a dick move, honestly.
Oh, man.
This is a
that guy was playing Kyle Pitts in
fantasy.
That
is the word of the year.
Content.
That's the opposite of what we're doing, though. I mean, there's a lot of people capitulating, but we are not capitulating.
We refuse. We refuse.
The pain. Let's go. Let's eat some of this pain.
Wow, this lobby though. Look at all these badges. Oh my god.
It's a friends and family draft.
This is this is friends and family if I ever seen it.
I mean, come on the badge bros. You see a lot of badges.
Yeah, I mean the only people watching us are sickos.
This is gonna be a very off-brand suggestion, but assuming he doesn't go, okay.
Ooh.
So I was gonna pitch for Derrick Henry, low key.
Okay, let's Gretch vote.
We can build however you guys want to build this one. Like you guys draft way more than I do.
Consider
me a tiebreaker. Let's go, Henry.
Okay, Numi.
All right,
what do you like?
I vote Henry.
It's gonna break.
You don't gotta ask me.
Okay,
yeah, you don't gotta ask me.
All right, let's do
You're
it.
a big Henry guy too.
No, he's come
so
on,
he would have been a no vote.
I would have been on T. I'm gonna have all the JJ. I'm gonna have all the Vikings this week.
Gotcha.
just against the Cards, but JJ,
Yeah.
I have
Numi's
leaps and bounds
Numi's
over
best
everyone.
ball. Yeah, your best ball percentage on Jefferson's what, like 20%?
Yeah, it was JJ over Cup, and it's not looking well. It's whatever. But I just said screw it.
Go with
It
your
was
heart,
JJ
baby.
over Cup.
Take a stand.
I love it.
Yeah, there's too many.
Speaking of capitulating, I mean, it
Now
looks
I
like
wish
the
we would have
Packers
taken
are-
Jefferson.
Yeah, yeah.
No, it's okay.
I mean-
Paul got him. That's all right. Now he'll just build out his 90th Minnesota stack with an Irv tight
number
end.
3. I was
Yeah.
inverted, Paul.
Yeah.
But I mean, speaking of capitulating, it seems like the Packers are somewhat capitulating. They kind of suck. So there's some week 17 equity there for Jefferson. That was honestly like something I was like probably thinking way too much into, was like that week 17 matchup for Jefferson. I just felt it just felt shitty. Well, now we have, I mean, a few really. So I would go AJ Brown.
Yeah,
Just
I
because
think
we talked about
the tier gap between wide receivers is
this is a break.
you got to take AJ.
Yeah, I like that. I really wanted that Waddle Amon-Ra mini without the
Mhm.
quarterbacks. But yeah, Gretch, AJ Brown.
No, I'm off of AJ Brown.
against that stout Steelers defense, no way.
What did you expect? You invite me on your show. You said Gretch AJ Brown.
Yeah, Gretch, AJ Brown. Gretch, short answer, please. Like,
That's the easiest short answer I've ever given.
Okay.
Okay, interesting.
I think
Taylor's fun. Amon-Ra's fun. Building out backdoor Vikings.
is third round Kyler like in play, and then like trying to backdoor him. What do you think?
Yeah, we could backdoor him with Ertz. That seems fun. What are your thoughts on Kyler this week, Gretch?
Let's do it. I would probably
Okay.
take Taylor. I'd probably go Henry Taylor and be like, yeah, these guys are gonna run for 150 yards.
Taylor might come back. We got some red badges in here. A lot of galaxy brains going on. There's
Yeah, you never know what the old portfolio is building out over here. Not everyone's knew me with 75% Justin Jefferson. Some of us have like a balanced
My highest
portfolio.
exposed is actually Kenneth Walker. So
Oh,
love it.
I like that. I mean,
and he has rose so much. I'm sad, but
mhm.
The Kyler pick, I mean, if his ADP is there, I bet he's paired with Jefferson a lot, right? And so
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I've seen so many. I mean, Chad in the chat, our ADP guru, can tell us is all that, but I've seen so many
Yeah, I'll
people in
bring it up,
mind when
actually.
they get D-Hop, they're almost prioritizing. Honestly, when they get Jefferson, they prioritize Kyler. I've seen that more, and then they'll just like let D-Hop fall sometimes. But a lot of people, it's just they're trying to get that big 3 stack every time.
We talked about the Bears kind of forcing teams to do what they do. Like I'm not really on CeeDee Lamb this week. I don't think I'm going to have much of him at all. And if he falls to us, that's going to be a very interesting conversation. But I'm not very psyched about CeeDee really.
According to Chad's data, his 70 whatever drafts, he's seen Kenneth Walker move up 3.4 spots. So not too crazy, but he's definitely trending in the right direction. I think we go wide receiver here, and I think we go either Amon-Ra or CeeDee, or we could bring the Dalvin back on Kyler. What do you guys think?
You guys choose. I like Amon-Ra, but you guys.
Yeah, it's too Amon-Ra.
Okay.
It's too cheap.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I like that. And I think
so
Amon-Ra's primarily a bring back for a lot of people right now. So I think getting him in a non-Miami build is very good.
There is a bring mini stack that and then that goes off of stealing signals. Raheem Mostert. So I mean, you wrote in there how he's the clear one. It's not a 1A, 1B. It's a 1-2, and he's ADP. He's still not on the screen yet. So
would you take him over Dalvin Cook though, over your boy?
Yeah, I kind of think
that's the thing. You know what I mean? It's tough, but man,
okay. I like this. I like this.
So do I. I think Cook is really good leverage off of Jefferson personally.
Sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have
but
double
Zach
leverage.
Ertz is terrible at football.
We don't.
All right.
Am I the only one who sees this?
Okay. You're the only
The
one
goal is
smart
to draft
enough
good
see it.
players.
All right. So
Okay.
Who we? If we're
I'm
skipping
kidding. We
over
can take
Ertz,
Ertz.
I know.
Well, we'll
I
see if
know,
he comes
but
back.
If we were to skip.
So
I mean,
another name that's just interesting because I'm going. is you wrote about Rondale and how he's going to move back inside because all of his routes were he was playing outside.
When we went Kyler, I was going to say Rondale because I assumed a lot of people were playing Hopkins. I was actually thinking Kyler.
Yeah, he's
Rondale,
free. He's free.
Because if you're fading the Kyler Jefferson, Thielen could have a 2-touchdown game. I mean, he still has that in his ring. I think Thielen's dust. But like that was my first thought. Was like kind of fun to build a Kyler Rondale Thielen team.
Yeah, it is kind of fun.
Probably super unique in these. Maybe a little too gal brain. That's what happens when you invite a guy on who doesn't do a lot of these drafts. He's like,
I don't think it's gal brain at all.
There's no Robbie Anderson in the player pool. They don't have him for some reason. So that matters. For like,
if Kyler's hitting the ceiling, someone's hitting. And I think Rondale still has big play potential. Like I do, and then like with Cook as the bring back, I like that. Oh, we need a tight end though.
Yeah, now we do. Okay,
that's
so
why
I think
you could do your boy Freiermuth too. With the
Ertz
AJ
is
Brown.
easy stack. Freiermuth is a bring back. Taysom's a wild card.
We can do.
What do you guys want?
I feel like Ertz doesn't elevate Kyler's ceiling at all. If Ertz is catching passes, then Kyler's fucked.
Okay,
like that's like that's a real take. That's
entirely fair. Yeah,
no, I think that's interesting. The only way, I mean, you need like a touchdown, you need like a red zone like touchdown. But if he's getting peppered with targets, like he's not doing
he
shit
could have
after
a 2
the catch.
game. Yeah, but if he's getting peppered with targets, like that's not good for Kyler's ceiling.
No,
that's a good point.
I'm dying to see the Rondale. Okay, we got baseball.
World Series contest coming up.
Yeah. I want the Rondale ceiling game so badly, so bad. Like he just has this exciting package about him that I really like. Just dying for that to happen just once, please.
Yeah, he's gonna have some games for sure. I don't know if they're gonna be that big of a ceiling, but he's gonna have some games.
Should we run back main slate one? I kind of want to, Gretch, I don't want to take your whole day, man. You're welcome to leave at any moment because we'll stream drafts till the end of time. But do you guys want to run one more battle royale here, like one more main slate, and then do a Thursday one, or do you want to try a Thursday one right now? Or
let's jump into Thursday.
Okay, sure.
I'm kind of itching to talk about this just because we get like an interesting matchup with Baltimore and Tampa Bay.
And Tampa, yeah. Let's get Gretch's thoughts on that and just in general. Here, Nez, take the lead, man.
Yeah, so I see this game, and we have two samples with Tom Brady the last 2 weeks losing to Pittsburgh, losing to the Panthers, and it's not good. That's very confusing to me because I'm not ready to write off the Buccaneers like at all. Like I still think I don't think Brady's washed. I don't really understand the lack of production necessarily, but I think with Baltimore, with their ability to score and their defense not necessarily scaring me, I think that there's shootout potential here with this game. So I think these contests are fun to draft, and we like to take questionable guys here because like we have like that swap possibility here. So like Julio Jones in the last round, I think is like pretty interesting if he does play. But if not, then we still get like a swap option with like one of the ancillary weapons on the Jaguars because we have Jaguars and Broncos on the slate along with the Ravens and Bucks. Are you thinking like what's your lean right now, Gretch, as far as like the way that the Bucks have looked? Are you concerned really?
I think you have to be concerned. Everything I was just saying, oh my God, no dark mode. What are you doing?
I know, dude.
For what, Twitter?
Yeah.
I never use Twitter on desktop, to be honest.
I think that you have to be concerned about the Bucs, but everything I was saying about the types of offenses, like they're worth betting on because if they do figure anything out, they will be an offense that throws. They have an immobile quarterback. There will be targets like Chris Godwin bouncing back, Julio Jones having a big game is possible, and there's so many offenses where. I mean, you look at like what Tyler Boyd's done particularly last week, like that is an elevation of them being that type of offense. It's willing to pass and have targets like we've seen in the NFL for a lot of years, but we're not seeing enough around the NFL right now.
Yeah. My eyes go to Mark Andrews here.
He's my 101. Greg Dulcich is the tight end too in this slate. Okay. So
no brainer.
Yeah.
That's enough said.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the teams I got before this, apparently people are starting to think Andrews doesn't play like hardcore. Even Silas just said that in our Discord channel.
There's a chance he doesn't play tonight. Like
he's starting to think. Well, yeah, he's hopeful to play. He didn't practice all week, so I mean, But Silas Putsy's not willing to play, and I this is making some Andrews is starting to fall.
Who's our favorite buck? Who's our favorite buck?
I think Evans. Godwin has been trending up.
Evans probably has to be, but I like Godwin more personally, just as a player. But I mean, I think Evans Godwin.
Yeah,
I would take Evans. Okay, Godwin it is.
Let's go. Let's go. I'm getting weird out here. Let's go. Yeah, no badge lobby. Let's go, Brett. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that Lamar with the double Tampa start from the front side there is pretty nice. I think, is this going to be a Lawrence team or is this going to be a Russ team?
Regardless, I think I would want Cortland Sutton.
Oh, interesting. Okay, sure.
But
my mind was like Christian Kirk and then pair with Lawrence, but I'm open to whatever.
It could be like it could be foolish analysis. I'm just like scared of like Christian.
And so
Kirk
we're taking a quarterback last round already. We're locked.
Yeah,
because our two opponents
both
already
these
have QBs.
two guys are out here.
Mm-hmm. So we just make that decision last.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Christian, I'm just worried about Christian Kirk going up against the Broncos secondary. That could be like not. That could be
that's
foolish,
fair.
But
the thing about Kirk, though, and correct me if I'm wrong, Gretch, is he moves around a decent amount and plays quite a bit of slot. So I'm not sure Surtain follows.
That was my first. I don't know Surtain's following tendencies either. I don't look a ton at quarterback wide receiver. That was my first thought too, though. It actually might be that it helps Kirk because
we could go Judy and go double here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys want to go Judy and go Russ double?
I think it's viable in this slate, but do we? The thing is like our running back. I mean, yeah, it's fine. Just do it. And I'm just hoping this guy doesn't take like Melvin, and then we're left with like hoping Rashad White scores a touchdown.
Melvin does make this team kind of gross, to be honest. Dude, I low-key
I have not done a lot of these drafts, but when you see Patrick Ricard on the first page, it's like, yeah.
Dude, running, that's the gift and the curse with these 2-game slates is like they are nasty very fast.
Okay, who do we like? Melvin or Latavius or Kenyon Drake is basically the debate, right?
I think Melvin runs more routes, but I think...
Yeah. If we're playing Russ, I think it's Melvin. He did run way more routes.
Okay, sure. Let's do that. And now we're kind of all in with no run back on this absolute gross Denver side. It's not a terrible build in a contest like this because who the hell else is coming out and stacking full Denver side and then going 1-1s on the other game?
Yeah. You need Jacksonville probably to have some type of special teams touchdown early or something. Get out to a lead that's not really super fantasy relevant, whatever that would be. And then Russ to actually have a good passing game. And I mean it could happen, right? He could support 3 guys in a negative script if he actually plays well.
Yeah.
Just get him off US soil.
Yeah, there we go. We're banking on those high knees pairing off right there. High knees on the plane narrative. Actually, one thing we took Kyler earlier, but new Call of Duty comes out. Are the boys worried? New Call of Duty comes out this week. Kyler's going to be up all night gaming. He's not going to play any.
When does it come out?
Sunday. I think it comes out tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
Like
it's tonight.
Night. Oh, yeah.
It's tonight.
Come on, boys. You got to be dialed in on the COD narratives now.
Yes, he's going to be staying up late tonight because that's when it drops. It's midnight.
Dude's playing Call of Duty all day tomorrow. He's surprise inactive.
Kyler Murray DNP. We're all just gonna be like, wonder what that is.
Weird reports about the Saturday walkthrough. Kyler Murray was not a non-participant.
Yeah, tonight at midnight. You don't think Kyler's staying up for launch? He probably already got like the early edition.
Yeah,
he's got
pre-downloaded on his console.
Yeah, he's ready to go at midnight. He's gonna be prestige in a way.
Well, he's West Coast, so right that would be Arizona.
Yep.
Yeah, so that means he would be getting it at like 9 o'clock.
He is definitely playing at 9.
Yeah. Oh, he's ready to go.
There's no. It's just a question of how late does he play.
Yeah.
You can probably find him if you go whoever he plays with on FaZe Clan. If you go to who they're streaming with, you could probably just catch in the bottom, like just see like his gamer tag.
Yeah, I don't know.
You'll know. I
wonder if he's like switched to a more anonymous presence in gaming. I'm not sure, but I would love.
He's not K1 on Xbox.
Somebody needs to do this analysis. I'm sure someone is.
Yeah. Actually, Gretch, okay, I'm just gonna keep clicking and running drafts until you tell me otherwise, and tell me to stop. So whenever Yeah, whenever you got to go or whatever, because we just kind of just keep clicking and chatting and bullshitting through these things because they're fun to do and they're only 6 minutes. What are your thoughts on ATN now?
I mean, to the moon.
Yeah, like literally, like legitimate, like top 10 running back ceiling, rest away kind of deal, or
yeah, definitely top 10 ceiling. I mean, the question is like, is it? I mean, you mean top 10 overall or top 10?
Yeah, top 10. Top 10 overall.
I think top 10 overall pretty comfortably. The question is like, is it? I mean, there's just not a lot of ceiling, right? I mean, he's been an explosive player. One of the let's make these picks.
What do we think about a Brady Godwin start? A little stack like that.
Well, we got Andrews. Brady and Andrews.
What's going on with Mark? I'm doing some reconnaissance.
Yeah, let's do a deep dive on hopeful. Hopeful's a gross word, but I'm gonna keep eating.
I mean, if he doesn't play, you just swap to Isaiah Likely, who's probably a pretty good low-owned player.
Seriously, that's actually a good call. That's actually a good call.
That's the reason I don't really care about like Andrews is specifically it's a free Likely swap.
Yeah,
because no one's taking him.
No one's taking Likely. Why would you just?
This is pretty good from Mike. F the clip is the Kyler's new gamer tag.
I love seeing him getting feisty on the sidelines with him. Like I couldn't read his lips, but I wish I knew what he was saying. I'm sure it was like, give me the goddamn play in time, but I wish.
Well, you guys missed. I threw out a good tweet, but nobody follows me and it doesn't matter. But like when that happened, I took that clip and I said, when your mom takes your Xbox away for play too much COD, and he was just screaming at.
Oh yeah.
That's just some low hanging fruit, but it was
good. Come on.
I'm giving it's constructive criticism. You want to know? I'll tell you.
Fine. I'll be better. We'll
hit the film room. You and I together. We'll break down your tweets. We got to pick.
But running backs are already set. That's
Gus.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Gus is 1, and then we were Sutton over Kirk last time. Are we still Sutton over Kirk this time? Kind of feels right. Because what are we setting up here? We basically are setting up the fact that we're taking Julio. Right? Yeah. So do you guys like Kirk or Sutton here? Or Bateman, I guess.
I would go Kirk.
All right.
Kirk?
Let's go Kirk.
Sure. All right. Yeah. Let's take Kirk this time. See where we end up. Guys, it's only money.
But yeah, we absolutely need Julio on this team. We like naked Brady is probably like the worst thing you can do.
Yeah.
Not even Giselle wants that.
So the
woo, Doobie.
Wow.
Let's go. Fuck yeah.
Good. The Kyler thing, you said you couldn't read his lips, but Cliff got asked, we're on the clock again. Jesus, you're on the clock so fucking much.
Yeah, they're lightning.
Yeah.
They're lightning.
You get some people that do auto ranks, and then it's just like boop boop, and then you're on the clock like
we could go
quick.
Double tight end and go K to Otten.
I was gonna say
go Brady double.
It's gotta be Cater White.
Yeah.
I kind of like White. Yeah. No. What do you like, Gretch?
I'd do Otten. If you take 2 tight ends, can you swap Andrews to a receiver?
That is I don't think you can. Gray area,
but like they call it, so that would be like our flex, right? And they say in the rules you can swap at the position. Well, the position is technically flex, so like I've been arguing for a while that like you can swap that tight end, but like we don't actually have.
But is Andrews our tight end or our flex?
Well, that's when it's like it doesn't matter. Like you know what I'm saying? So
I know, but would they just say, "Oh, you drafted him at tight end first, so now he's your tight end"?
That feels like something they should have clarified at some point.
Well, yeah, I've asked like Red Mamba. He's like in the Discords like with us like all the time, and like we've never gotten like full blown clarity. So we might have to make that a mission of ours.
Mr. Good Boy.
He and I both.
Ready.
I'm
ready.
I'm at my my
you're
my
at
2
your
o'clock
time?
stop.
Okay,
mm-hmm.
Cool. No, no worries. Let's and here he comes.
Oh, and we might have just gotten some clarity, at least with Lee here, Lee in the streets, Chad in the streams. He had a swap from wide receiver to running back, so that might provide a little clarity for us. So
it does, but it's not ranks. A onesie position, so it's harder.
Well, but it's cross positional swapping. That was the question.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No, you're right. You're right. I just have different thoughts. But I think wide receiver, running back is like interchangeable in their mind as flex. And I think tight end is classified differently is what I've kind of started thinking, but I have no basis of knowledge to that.
I'm putting Mamba on the hot seat.
Okay, yeah, do it because this is actually good because we're gonna do a swap show soon to like talk about how to take advantage of it and stuff. Yeah. Can we make Gretch a hoops guy? That's the real question. Gretch, are you a hoops guy?
Nah.
No. Yeah, me neither.
It wasn't intentional, but I mean, it might be the same for you. Like I used to enjoy the NBA. The Sonics left, and I just like didn't have a team to watch every night. It was never really my sport growing up. I was a baseball, football guy growing up. I played some basketball, but like I wasn't like that was my clear third favorite sport of the big three sports. And once the Sonics left, I loved UW basketball. I'm a UW guy.
Nice.
Roy, that era was awesome, but like they started to suck, and I just stopped
Isaiah
watching
Thomas.
basketball. It just happens. Yeah, Isaiah Thomas, dude. Yeah, I was just thinking yesterday about that Gus Johnson call. I mean, that's the greatest call in broadcasting.
Yeah, the three
Thomas, game winner against Arizona to win the Pac-12 championship. I mean, not the biggest moment of all time, but like the cold-blooded call, dude. If you haven't seen that, go to YouTube. Look up Isaiah Thomas, Gus Johnson. It is such a good call.
Gus Johnson, anything he does.
Yeah, Gus Johnson, that Brandon Stokely call with the Raiders too. That's all I remember him screaming.
Oh yeah. That's a good shout too. My favorite one was always the one that got him in trouble, the CJ 2K one.
Yeah,
and that's why he got relegated back to college ranks before he came back, kind of deal. When the getting away from the cops speed. You guys never heard that before?
Yes.
CJ Johnson breaks or Chris Johnson breaks like a huge 70-80 yard.
Yeah, I see that now from 09.
From the cop speed, and it was like, ooh, I'm not sure we should have said that one.
Buddy.
All right. Good drafts today. I'd say good drafts, but I'm kind of lying. We tried our best. But we got some potential. We're a little unique out there. Gretch, I'll send you those drafts, and hopefully we can take down 50 dimes together. Appreciate you so much coming on. Everybody, he never plugs his own stuff, so we got to keep doing it for him. Go hit that Substack. Go hit that Ben Gretch Substack in the comments below. Follow him, Yards per Gretch on Twitter. I mean, who are we kidding? You guys are all already doing all this sort of stuff if you're here hanging out with us. But nonetheless, any parting words, gentlemen?
Nothing.
Just pleasure.
Yeah, man, this was fun chopping it up with you. Always fun to talk football with all of our guests, especially someone like yourself. So this was great, man. A lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I had a blast too. You're talking about like you'd go all day. I mean, I always love the streams that go an hour and a half, and I feel like we just started. Like this is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Welcome back anytime, Gretch. We're drafting teams every day at 12 p.m. Eastern, so open invite, man. Anytime you want to draft, hop on in. We'll be your circuit for the
scratch that itch for you.
Yeah, scratch that itch because you can't get it.
Sounds good.
All right. Appreciate everybody being here, hanging out.
I'm gonna take you up, by the way. I mean, I know it's taken a while for me to get on. It's always tough with stealing signals the first like couple, few weeks, month and a half, but starts to cool out. We know most of the trends in the later part of the year, so I'll have some time.
No, absolutely, Gretch. Yeah, open invite. Honest to God, man. Man of my word around here. All right, cool. And everybody else, like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. We'll be hanging out in the Discord. Join that Discord below. And good luck tonight. We'll probably do some hoops and some MLB stuff tomorrow, along with some more main slate. What day is tomorrow? Friday?
Yeah, big day.
Yeah, Friday's a big day. That'll be a good multi-sport show. Mark Garcia will be back and talk us through the edge on 1 week season. And we got some irons in the fire, some special guests potentially next week. Maybe that head of winning, maybe another ship chaser. Some irons are in the fire, kids. So we'll be back. Everybody's favorite time of the show, the end. Peace.